Bring a Trailer podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bring a Trailer podcast. Alex here, Director of Auction Production, joined again by Zach, our Director of Auction Strategy. How are you, Zach?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for being here, man. And then joined once again also by Tyler, one of our production managers. Tyler, welcome. How are you, buddy?
Dude, I'm doing awesome. It's great to be sitting here with Zach for a change. We don't get to make this happen very often.
I know. Thanks for cruising up from beautiful Monterey to make this happen, Tyler.
Well, when you say it like that, I maybe regret it a little bit. But
Tyler came in his beautiful 996 Cabriolet, not on a motorcycle, which is what we're going to talk about
today. Which is
today.
a huge mistake for multiple reasons, because we're just talking about how he's going to leave in traffic zone. And California lane splitting's totally legal. So
one of the only places it's legal, right, Tyler?
I think it's the only state.
It's the only state. It's technically, what it is it's not illegal. There is no actual law saying you can do it. There's just no law saying that you only can have one vehicle per lane.
Interesting.
I thought there was a law at least prohibiting it over 30 miles an hour.
Yes, there are. There are guidelines, technically. And there are two guidelines. One is like over 30 miles an hour and one's like over 40 miles an hour. You're not supposed to ever be going more than 15 miles an hour faster than traffic.
I see.
And if you've ever been sitting in traffic and have someone blow by you on a bike, there's a good chance they are going more than 15 miles an hour faster.
Yeah, 15 minutes. It's the real psychos that are blowing by when you're at 80 on the freeway, splitting lanes out of nowhere that have a total death wish.
Yeah, I've been on my usual, my touring bike and my commuting bike, I guess you'd say, is my ST2 with like the trunk, the bags, the mirrors that stick out 3 feet on either side. Like I think I'm going to hit other cars. And I've been blown by like Aprilia Shivers and like hypermotard type of bikes that are maybe 1.5 feet wide at best. And those guys are just blowing right by.
Now you're really taking me back to my supermoto days. Yeah, you're
I didn't know there were supermoto days.
Supermoto in the city is the best bike setup you could ever have. It's so thin. You can split lanes like nothing else. But you're also taking me back to all the car mirrors that I've inadvertently punched.
Oh, that actually does happen.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask about
all the time, especially intercity. The lanes are much tighter, or like the SF Bay Bridge. It's the old bridge in particular. It's really cramped, and it's super easy when you're filtering up on a light to punch a mirror.
Oh, I had no idea. I always wondered if that happened. I'm always like so careful. I usually stop like a couple cars back.
You've gone all these years and you never clipped a mirror?
No, but I'm like I'm saying, I'm like extremely cautious.
But you're riding bikes that are higher up. Right today, a guy I thought for sure on my way to the office today, I thought a guy was for sure going to take my right side mirror off, and his handlebars cleared over the top of my mirror by about, I don't know, 2 inches maybe. And he was riding with authority.
Nice. He's got those ape hangers. Yeah, that's a guy that knocks your mirror off and then you apologize to him.
Totally.
Yeah. If you're not awake at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning when a big Harley blows by you, splitting lanes, then that will wake you up.
Is the vintage, I've seen a couple of so the bike riding in San Francisco here is crazy. Like the people on pedal bikes, but also on motorcycles are wild in the city, as many know, probably in a lot of big cities. I've noticed young guys on vintage Harleys, speaking of ape hangers again, that's kind of back, like narrow ape hangers and like the big bar on the back of the seat and kind of candy
sissy bar.
Yeah. Candy flake. I didn't want to say that word. Thank you, Tyler.
Easy rider.
Easy rider, but like young dudes with like mustaches and they have like candy flake open face helmets on and stuff. Is that coming back?
It's a thing. It came back like 10 years ago, I think.
It's the whole Roland Sands movement, right?
Roland Sands, I think he had something to do with it. I mean, I love everything he does. We actually listed a Victory of all things that sold like last week, I want to say, an 8-ball. And it was like customized by Roland Sands, had all his like nifty parts on it. He did it with Victory. But yeah, he was a huge factor.
When all his gear dropped at the time, that's kind of what Alex is talking about, where it was that 70s leather biker jackets that looked so good in period, and all the 3/4 helmets with the sparkle flake.
Yes.
That was right. And then Bell started doing it as well. And I feel like that's right around when
have you guys seen the Bike Riders yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
No, you haven't?
I think it just came out.
It's
fairly recent.
But I've heard good reviews from movie people. Have you heard any motorcycle people say anything about it yet?
I haven't, but like looking at the previews, it looks pretty legit. Like I think they used real bikes. And if they didn't, like one of my things I always hate, and like I don't know if you saw one of the more recent Indiana Jones, the old Harrison Ford Indiana Jones movies where they had him on a 50s Harley, and it was just clearly a new Harley with like some like
tough.
old doodads on it, and that ruined the whole movie for me. I don't know if it was a good movie or not, but that ruined it.
Yeah, something about seeing the swastika on the chrome tank really took you out of it.
That's right. Yep, that was a big problem for me.
Was it Indy's Loud Pipes Save Lives sticker on his hardbags?
And he had his little bell on the bottom of it. That's right. Yeah, it was all of it.
I did rewatch that kind of stuff. Takes me out of movies too, with cars and airplanes and motorcycles. I watched the one with Sean Connery recently. Is that Holy Grail, the Holy Grail movie? And there's that amazing motorcycle chase scene where Sean Connery's in the sidecar.
And it's supposed to be, I don't know what the bike is, but it's supposed to be a
BMW Boxers, but they're like they're like modern Japanese dirt bikes or period Japanese dirt bikes, and that's a little tough. But that's because they want to do wheelies and stuff,
right? I want to say the second Mission Impossible had that great like or maybe the third one had that great like motorcycle chase scene where they ended up on a beach on like these sport bikes, and I haven't seen the movie in so long, so I couldn't tell you what
dirt
they
tires
were.
on them.
And yeah, when he's doing wheelies on the beach and like
he's
Honda
got a paddle
VFR
tire on the back.
Exactly. You can see the paddle tires.
I think we need to just make this podcast into motorcycle movie highlights at this point.
Well, they should hire us when they're making a movie with cars or motorcycles to be the consultants, because they often screw that stuff up.
Yeah, and it ruins the movie for people.
Yeah, for me, for nerds. Clearly, I'm the non-writer here, so what I want to do is play the motorcycle noob, which I am, and ask you guys some questions kind of about listing bikes on BAT, but we've also got a little game we kind of want to play. And Zach, I was hoping to start, you could talk a little bit about the evolution of listing bikes on BAT, which is not something we always did, and we've turned into kind of a major auction house for bikes in some ways. I was looking at numbers. We've got more than 50 motorcycles live right now, and we're coming in on 8,000 total listed. I mean, you've been sitting in the curation chair for that whole time. How's that kind of evolved, and what's been your thinking about listing bikes? Being a bike guy yourself, but also, they're an interesting prospect.
I think the diplomatic way to put it is it's evolved organically, much like the site. But early days, especially just me, Howard, Randy, you, I was pretty much the only one in the office that cared about motorcycles, I would say. I think Randy's probably always liked R100Ss and vintage BMWs, but it's like a foreign language to Howard for sure. So yeah, every once in a while something would come by, just kind of ad hoc, well presented, cool, maybe something I had experience with, move it through.
What were some of those early bikes? Do you remember some of the early ones that we listed?
Old BMWs was kind of the first, and that is the most, I think, automotive enthusiast overlap as well. BMW riders and car enthusiasts. And I mean, this is a stereotype, so take it with a grain of salt, but
not from you.
In my experience, I don't know what that's supposed to mean, Tyler. And thankfully Chris will edit that out, whatever your angle is there. But the stereotype of BMW riders they're a little odd. They're maybe the guys at the motorcycle meet that you avoid eye contact with and meet up with your other Honda Red Wing buddies. So
they are kind of hard to avoid, though, in all the high vis, Aerostich gear. So I'll just fill in the blanks for you.
Aerostich, man, that's how you got to survive out here in the city, clipping mirrors. Yeah, but good call. They're modular helmets for sure, and the onesie Aerostitches riding around. So yeah, and then maybe like some well-presented Bonnevilles and stuff like that. And I'm taking it back to that. You were definitely there by then. We listed, I think it was a Honda CT90. It wasn't a 70, and it was the first one we listed, maybe a little bit begrudgingly, and it sold for like 11 grand. And the seller called us and left us a voicemail, basically doing backflips. He was like, "You made my life selling this CT90 for 11.5, whatever it was." So that's what I'm tracing back to, sort of the taproot moment of, okay, maybe.
And Honda mini bike sellers have been chasing that dragon ever since.
For sure. And some of them are getting them. I mean, Christmas specials selling in August and September for still 10 grand and up. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, we've sold a few of those for 20 and up as well. There's some small bikes that really bring in some big numbers.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, and back to your original question, Alex, like the great stuff's always been very apparent. Everybody loves CBXs, sounds fantastic. The Rickman Hondas in the early days. Oh
man, I love those.
Interesting early BMWs with sidecars. That was kind of the
Staub. What is the one that looks like a blimp?
Staub.
The one that's got the ribs on the nose. A beautiful thing. Yeah.
And then right about Probably 17 or 18. We started to list stuff with more cadence. That's where we get into a lot of the CB 350, 450, 550, 750, all of that stuff.
My old man listed the first Vincent, didn't sell it. I'll never forgive him for that.
That's right.
And we've had a lot of Vincents since that have sold. We have a great Egli-Vincent right now. Can you give a brief primer on an Egli-Vincent? What is that? It's a Vincent motor, but a different frame, Tyler. What is it exactly?
Yeah, it's basically a Vincent motor in a modern chassis.
Okay.
And there's
tube frame, though. The motor's not stressed on it?
I believe it is still stressed.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I have to pull up a picture of it. I think the idea is that it's still basically the same concept. I'm pulling it up now. Yeah, it is still stressed.
Oh, okay.
And the cool thing is these Eglis, they made a few different generations of them. And like I said, it's a Vincent power plant with all modern equipment on it. So like this one, it's got dual rear shocks instead of kind of that nice like mono lever type of like triangulated rear end that just is so far advanced for its time in the 1950s. And then now we've almost kind of gone back a little bit to like a dual shock type bike, even though it probably handles better. And yeah, there's been a few different. This is a Slater. There's a Godet, and then there's a third one too. And it's these frame builders are putting these together, and they're just they're super cool bikes and different collectors for every single one of them.
I think it's a cool way to say it, to advanced for the time or even advanced motorcycle technology, because a lot of people on the outside of being motorcycle enthusiasts just see two wheels, maybe a monoshock, maybe dual shocks in the rear and front forks. And it seems pretty simple. But a lot of this old stuff, Indian 4s of the 20, were groundbreaking, really interesting technology.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's been, that's kind of the way I love, and I love this about cars too, but I feel like with bikes, maybe you see it a little bit more. I know, Zach, you're into both, but like, I feel like with bikes, you can kind of see some of the advancements a little bit more because it's all visible. You can see some of this old tech, like you're talking about an Indian 4. And like really four-cylinders never came in until...
Once you know what to look for, but I think most people, eyes kind of glaze over and it all just blends together.
Yeah, it's it's cool. And
until you see the airbag deploy on a Honda Goldwing, and then it brings everybody back in.
I know. Goldwing's just ruining things for everybody.
I have such a soft spot for Honda Goldwings. I really want to do a cross-country Goldwing adventure one of these days.
We sold one. I wasn't planning on talking about this bike, but did you see the 94? It wasn't even an Aspencade. It was a 94, whatever the base model Goldwing is, with that like...
Still a 4-cylinder or a 6?
I believe that would be a 6 by then. I don't know. Actually.
The early ones are 4s, right?
Yeah, they 4s, and I don't know when the switch over to the 6 took place. But this one had a sidecar. It's got the like fully 80s, 90s style cladding on it.
But sidecar and a Goldwing is a miss because the back seat is so comfortable on those already.
That's my family car, though. That's my family hauler.
That would be the family hauler. That's right. You could fit your whole family in that car.
You need no sidecar, and you need the Goldwing trailer.
Oh,
the Goldwing trailer. You've seen that on the highway. The Goldwing people towing
Goldwing tricycle with a Goldwing trailer, maybe?
That's right. The motor trike conversions. Goldwings already have a reverse gear. So you're kind of like...
reverse gear?
Yep.
I should say
air conditioning.
Yeah.
What?
I think in 06, when the refresh was, there was a little nav screen also.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't joking about the airbag.
I think I knew about the airbag, but I didn't know about a reverse gear. I guess because they weigh so much money, you need the assist, right?
Wow. And actually, technically speaking, it's like I think what it is, it's almost like a starter motor that engages something in the transmission, and so it's not a reverse gears like you would think on a car, but it's like an electric
assist or something.
Yeah, so you kind of press the button, hold it down, and then go.
Are they automatic transmissions? They have a torque converter?
You could get them in a CVT somewhat recently, I think.
Yeah, the newer ones. I mean, Honda does have a nice, it's a DCT, which is what they use on their new Africa Twin for like a semi-automatic type of / automatic shifting. But the earlier ones would have all been manual. And I couldn't tell you what. I have not a huge interest in the newer ones, so I couldn't tell you what kind of transmission.
I do know that though that people like Zach, I have a really good buddy, shout out Tony, who are kind of sport bike people or dirt bike people, but they get really excited about Goldwings for some reason. Like I remember I think the statute of limitations has passed, that they had a video on Instagram of him racing our other buddy Roddy in his E63 wagon, supercharged V8 wagon, and the Goldwing like walks it. Like, it's this big, heavy Goldwing.
And they actually, they kind of handle well.
Yeah.
Like they hide their weight well. You can have some fun in the turns. They're super interesting.
They
are Hondas through and through. They're not slow, and they, like Zach is saying, they do handle pretty well. It's a little awkward.
The flat motor because it's all sitting low.
Oh man, it's everything. I mean, just Honda. I mean, you love Honda as much as anybody.
Zach and me love Honda.
When they set out to engineer something, they do it. I mean, we're talking about some really special bikes on the site, and I mean, the amount of runes, the Honda runes. Yeah. Have you guys been seeing those?
Okay, you're not up on the rune thing.
No, tell me about the rune thing.
Illustrates your point wonderfully. I mean, Honda way over-engineered basically a kind of Harley competitor, and they lost money on every single one that they sold.
Yeah. That's the super like retro looking thing. They're like early 2000s, something like that.
Yes.
Okay, and they're fared in, but a chopper, right?
Yeah,
kind of like a fared in chopper.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the engine, bodywork, everything is like fared cladding. There's not like a fairing that kind of protects you, so it's still a cruiser style. But yeah, it's a 6-cylinder. I've never ridden one, but I would imagine it's pretty fast. And I want to say Honda lost like 60 grand on each one. And that might even be low. It was just Honda's done this. I read an article about this the other day too, about Honda just throwing crazy stuff out there that made no sense at all. But they just wanted to do something really well. The CBX.
The NSX might be that way. I don't know if they made money on that. It certainly seems like they over-engineered that and then sold a bunch the first 2 years, and then Zach and I both have one, as you know, Tyler. And it doesn't feel. It feels like they sunk a lot of dough into that, and then.
But at the same time, the fact that they're selling the exact same car 15 years later,
I know
probably points to the fact that.
Don't you think they're trying to amortize the cost? They're like, please help us break even on this. I love that about Honda. Honestly, that's one of my favorite things about them. They care about the engineering.
Yeah, we have we're running right now. Just went live a couple of days ago. It'll be gone by the time this podcast comes out. But we listed our first Honda DN01. Have you ever heard of this one, Zach?
No, do tell.
It's this really like wild style bike. You'd probably put it maybe in like Rune era styling, or like the same people were behind it.
What's the lot number on it?
Lot number is 162063.
Is this the CVT one that's based off some Japanese show or something?
Wow, look at this thing.
I don't know about the show, but it's basically they used this bike to develop a CVT, a hydraulic CVT transmission. So it doesn't use like typical kind of pulleys and clutches. It actually uses hydraulic like rods and rams to adjust gear ratios.
That's super fascinating, Tyler, but this is a motorcycle podcast, not a scooter podcast. So you can save that one.
That was the whole point of the bike. It was like they wanted to appease scooter riders, sport bike riders, and tourers.
Aprilia did that, in 08 or so? I forget.
Was it the Futura or something? Oh, no, they like one of their real scooters, like a 650 or something?
No, it split. It was a CVT or sequential shift, and I think the shifts were up on the handlebars. Like it's not a quick shifter where you're still shifting with your feet. Man, it's not the Shiver, but it was a similar, not fully fared upright bike. I got to look this up.
Oh man, I got to know about that one.
The DN01 has some scooter-looking tendencies. You know what it reminds me of? Either of you guys remember the Dan Gurney motorcycle where you sat low in it and leaned back? It was for old guys with back problems.
I think like the bicycle. I think it was called the
Alligator or Salamander or something like that. Yes, right.
Aprilia Mana 850.
Oh,
that's
sure, yeah.
Automatic, upright.
Have we were listed one, Zach?
No, I mean, I don't know if we will.
Well, I mean, we've got this thing up on the site, so never
this
say
thing's
never.
Cool looking. It also reminds me, what was the fared-in BMW bike from the late 80s that was super streamlined?
The K series?
Yeah, the K1000.
Yes.
We haven't seen one of those in a little while.
Those are sick.
Oh, they're great. I mean, I like the modern K1300 and 1600s too. Mm-hmm. They're like autobahn bikes.
Basically for high-speed cruising, right? Rather than
definitely. High-speed cruising. And I mean, I was on my Ducati ST2 in Wisconsin on I-90, just going straight from Milwaukee to Madison. It's just straight throttle open. And I was doing like 90 and, I was pushing it a little bit. We're talking about L twins and kind of V twins, and like maybe they don't have quite as much power as you need sometimes. And a guy in a K1300 just like blew by me on cruise control. He had to be doing 120 miles an hour.
But in America, the risk of a pothole or in the middle of the country, an animal or something like that, it would definitely hold me back from topping out
From
the
wanting to
series.
do
But
that.
when you're on the Autobahn, that bike shines.
Oh man, that's we've always talked about what bike would actually be good on the Autobahn, because you do need some level of wind protection. And I mean, what kind of speeds are we talking about? I mean, you can't go slow on the Autobahn for safety reasons, right?
And you don't want to do that on a sport bike, right? I mean, you could run up to 200 miles an hour on a sport bike, but you don't want to stay hunched over for hours and
It
hours.
depends on
Right?
for hours, no.
Okay.
But I think you're hitting some of the limited sections of the Autobahn for there. For 20, 30-minute stints. When I had a Triumph Daytona, which is a 3-cylinder, 675 sporty bike, even though most non-moto people hear Triumph and just think of a Bonneville. And
You've played me videos of those with exhaust on them. They sound
they're sweet. I love that bike so much. But you could lay completely flat with all your weight on the tank and tuck in. So it was actually not very much stress on your back or your abs or anything. And you could just lay flat with the throttle open and do distance, no problem on that.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I love those Triumph triples. I rode a Tiger 800 for a summer. And God, it just hit so beautifully. Like, not the fastest bike by any means, but like just a really pleasant bike.
It's a charismatic engine. It makes so many different noises. It's got enough in the mid-range that you don't need to rev it out all the time. Like a lot of the 4-cylinders are high strung. And then it has a sweet top end with a bunch of different noises it makes up there than in the mid-range. Yeah, I really like those motors.
Yeah, I almost got one after that. I was like, I really like this. And then it was almost too good of a bike. Like it had character, it had the performance, speed, everything, comfort, everything you want. But I'm like, I kind of want something that like hurts a little bit, that kind of makes me work for it.
Have either of you guys driven or ridden the, is it Yamaha? There's a Yamaha triple that's really popular.
Those came out after I
YZ09, something like
hung
that?
up my helmet. But I think that's what it was, the YZ09. And now they have a 700 that's also a 3-cylinder.
They're very good looking, and they're a little more upright, I think. Have you ridden one of those?
No, but one of our guys on the moto team, Jacob, has an 07.
Oh, okay.
And he loves it. He uses it for getting around like Detroit. He says he needs it for the potholes. So it kind of like handles a little bit of everything, it sounds like.
Awesome.
There's so many cool new bikes coming out. There's I think a Kawasaki 400 4-cylinder that you can get now that I kind of drool over. Even
400 4-cylinder.
Yeah. So it's revvy, small, light, sounds cool, but the new Kawasaki styling is not quite for me.
Yeah. I wanted to pivot into affordable performance, which is a little game I want to play with you guys. But before I do that, very quickly, any big highlights over the summer? We're just kind of coming off our crazy summer season. Any big bike highlights that either of you want to mention? We had some premium stuff. Tyler, anything that come to mind for you that you want to highlight?
Yeah. And I'm waiting to hear Zach's thoughts on this, or see if he'll chime in.
Oh, good. Get some spice from Zach. We need more of that.
Yes. We sold a Combat Motors. It's a P51 Combat. It's you may have heard of it as Confederate Motors in the past. They changed their name to Combat. Did a bunch of kind of like redesigning type of stuff. It's like the billet aluminum, V-twin based, like $160,000 sticker when new. We sold that for $81K, and as you might imagine, reviews were mixed on the site, but there was a lot of interactions. It hit reserve and did quite well. And I think it's fun. I'm into stuff like we're talking about with the Rune and the CBX and this DN01 scooter. Like, I like anything that pushes the limits, that's kind of doing something different, that's got some character. But it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. But I was pretty happy with it.
You're totally right, Tyler. Like, through the lens of experimental design, this thing's just wild, and the fact that you could use this just like a vehicle on the road is super cool. But I look at all of these and I think it feeds into everyone's mentality that motorcycles are dangerous, because no matter what happens on this thing, there's some sharp edge to basically fillet you, stab you, whatever adjective you want to use. It could be a minor fall. So they look inherently unsafe.
It's a wild looking thing. That's a Harley motor, some kind of a big air cooled vehicle.
Yeah, I think that one's a twin cam based or X wedge based. I can't remember.
Is it hard? It's big. It's a
huge twin
cubic inch engine.
132 cubic inch.
Oh, that's an X wedge. So it's a 3 cam. I'm gonna say it's a 90 degree.
Or 3 cams?
Yeah.
What?
It's a 3 cam. It's wild. I think the inner intake push rods, and I'm making a V with my hands here for those of you who can't see.
Yes,
the intake push rods operate off 1 cam, and then I think each exhaust has its
separate,
own,
and they're all 3 are down in the case.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, and they're all run by a belt. And actually, the cool thing
is that what this exposed thing is? Okay,
yeah. So
gotcha.
that's your exposed cam chest, and that's a wonderful engine. And I don't know if I call it an X wedge, and I apologize if it's not actually built by S&S Cycle. S&S Cycle kind of like started that concept for a motor, and there's a whole background story.
That's what's in the Morgans, right?
Yeah,
Doesn't
that's
the
right.
Morgans have those in them?
Yeah.
The little Morgan
Yeah,
three-wheelers?
and I don't know if this is the S&S one.
Formerly, oh man, I don't want to really take a dark turn here, but have you guys seen the current Morgans?
No,
Yes.
what happened?
Oh, yikes. Yeah, look it up after the podcast.
Okay.
We'll
Is
save
that a
that for another
motorcycle
one.
or a car? It's somewhere in between. I don't even know what that is.
It
really.
depends on what state you're in, actually, at this point.
I'm not in the state where I'm ready to hear bad things about Morgan, so we can move on because I love Morgan. I hope they haven't made terrible mistakes. What other highlights, Zach? Anything big? This you handle scheduling too, so I'm curious if there's any biggies that you popped into premium.
I mean, we've had a few Black Shadows, which is cool to be in the position that we can say, we had a few of those.
I know.
We'll gloss
I know,
we
right
don't even
over
talk
the-
about Black Shadows anymore. Oh my God, that's
4
wild.
or 5 we had over the last year. So that's been pretty great. I mean, selling the Indian 4 earlier this year for
Yes.
$205,000.
That was huge.
Wild.
That was the unrestored one that we've talked about before.
Right. It was
Tyler? Yeah, okay. I know
unrestored
you-
and just like beautifully running. I mean, it was maintained.
I don't know if you guys caught the MV Agusta we sold in
No, I
May
love
for
those.
$151,000. I mean, it's
Oh, the America, the 750S.
Is that a straight-
This would just be MV Agusta. This was a fantastic. We've talked about these bikes before, Alex. Just an amazing motorcycle, and it's called the America because it was really made for the American market. And God, Zach, that might have been a record. I don't know if I've ever seen one go higher than that. 151K. We've typically seen them in the past in like the 70s and 80s as highs, but really special bike. It was a really fantastic example. And the auction itself, I think, played a big role too. We have basically the guy who invented the 750S, the America, Chris Garville, who always gets involved in these auctions, which is just super cool. He's the one who pushed MV Agusta to build an American style motorcycle. And
Oh,
this is
sorry.
what
I was
he
like
brought
not
here.
following you at all. This is like with the vintage 750.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. I think I love these dustbin fairings. I want to talk about dustbin fairings more. We just had that Ducati. It was a 911R bike. It was a replica of the Mike Hailwood Ducati
Yeah.
with that same kind of fairing on it. Man, I love those.
Yeah,
things.
another beautiful bike.
only other mention I'll share over the last couple months was the 31 BMW R11, which I think could be the prettiest bike all time. It's definitely in the running. So cool to have one. And thanks again for Rob for bringing
That's
that
up there. Look at that thing. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this MV Agusta.
I
It's
don't
a
know.
fantastic
Give me a
bike.
Rickman Honda if we're talking bikes. from
Totally.
the 70s.
It actually kind of looks like even that little fairing on the back of the seat looks like a Rickman kind of.
Well, and we were talking earlier about kind of like what versions of bikes that are more affordable than others could you get? And you can get a Rickman Honda or Kawasaki for like a fraction of that. And for all I know, it could be even a better bike.
Yeah.
It certainly looks as good. Well, that's a good segue. Thanks for saying that. So I thought it might be interesting to discuss with you guys today affordable performance in 21st century motorcycles, because I don't know anything about this and you guys can school me a little bit. Zach was throwing a little shade earlier. I'm one of those people who sees motorcycles and my eyes glaze over a little bit. I'm interested in the technology, but I just find them aesthetically beautiful. I'm not a rider. My dad had Vincents, and I think those are beautiful. And I mean that MV Agusta America, I mean, it's just unbelievable looking to me. There's a purity to motorcycle looks that cars don't have really. So I was hoping you guys could school me a little bit, maybe we could even talk about how we want to approach it in terms of figuring out what does affordable performance mean on motorcycles, relatively recent ones.
Well, the good news for you, Alex, is affordable performance is basically all motorcycles from the 21st century.
Okay, but like what can you get for 5K? What can 5K buy you in the 21st century?
A better way to start that question is, what's your favorite color?
Can you get a performance Ducati from the 21st century for 5K?
You can. The problem, and what's interesting, is I feel like a lot of non-moto people associate Ducati with Ferrari, which you could do, but now imagine that Honda, Toyota, Mazda all make cars with the exact same performance and for basically the same price point.
Right.
So the playing field's a lot more even, and the maintenance costs on the Ducatis, particularly when they still had belts and valve services in the intervals, like my Ducati, it had, I think, belts every 12,000 miles and valves every 6,000 miles. And that was like an $1,100 or $1,400 service. So that's a pretty big bill.
And that's a big V-twin Ducati.
Yeah, that was a liquid cooled V-twin Monster S4R.
With desmodromic valves?
Yes.
And that'd be the 4 cam.
Yeah, it was the 996 engine, but in the monster body.
Right.
And I think Ducati only made 2 factory blue Ducatis ever, and one was the S4R blue, white stripe, white wheels, perfection. That was my bike. And then I think you could get, is it a 888? There's some 80s Ducati that
you can get a Passo 750 in this like really stunning blue. And I don't know if that was a US spec bike. It might have only been a European thing because you never really see them. You kind of see like the white and the red ones here, but there was a lovely blue Passo 750. Yeah.
But you can get something like that for $5,000 if you wanted to.
You can get some, I think, to get into the more desirable Ducatis, you're looking at, I hope you're sitting down, you're looking at maybe more like $8,000 or $9,000, where like when you're talking about cars and performance, it's, you know, the difference between even a Miata and a Z06 Corvette is tens of thousands of dollars. But with bikes, if you want something fun and fast to tool around on, it really is $5,000 to $10,000 unlocks a ton of performance.
What do I have to pay if I want something that revs to 15,000 RPM?
15,000? I mean, an R6, I think
I remember there was a 17.5 one at one point. That was maybe a gimmick. It was an R6 that revved to 17.5.
One of my favorites, it wouldn't be 21st century, it'd be the Honda NC30, which is a 400, like we were talking about, 400s. I want to say that had like an 18K or something.
That was a 2-stroke, right?
No, that was a 4-stroke.
Is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
And that had some kind of we've sold a few of them, but man, I don't know if you're sending them away or what, but we haven't seen one of those in a long time.
No, I don't think they made that many, right? There's only a few hundred.
Maybe. I know we sold like 3 or 4 of them very like close together, and then just haven't seen another one.
Yeah, that's one of the bikes I always threaten to just buy and put in the office here so we can all look at it.
So beautiful.
Totally.
You have RC30 styling for, $10,000.
I know. Yeah, those are sweet. Yeah, the R6s, I think in 06 is when they redesigned it, and it was one when the, I think 99 R1 came out. It kind of changed the game of contemporary motorcycle styling.
I'm all about exhaust that doesn't go out by the rear wheel. It's either up under the seat or down below.
I think those early R1s was side, but it sort of set the design language for the next 20 years of motorcycle. When it came out, it was just unreal, and those early R1s are so good. And then Yamaha in 06 did something a little bit similar with the
Gixxers
R6.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. In that styling vein, I mean, you have go back to Ducati, like the 999, again, a bike that kind of people love it, people hate it, but it's not a bad bike.
Just hate.
Okay, I was gonna say, I think I love it, but I think you and I are on different pages on a lot of this stuff.
Ducati basically took what's top 3 most iconic motorcycle designs of all time, could be top 3 prettiest bikes, and then went to incredibly controversial styling.
I mean, how do you follow like the 916 body style though? I mean, it's
you follow it with the 1098, which also
maybe.
Oh my god, that's so good.
Or I mean the Desmo Sedici RR too. I mean, I think that's a lovely design motorcycle. Suzuki, we were talking about this one earlier. TL1000R. I mean, I don't know what those are going for. Those might be like 5-6K.
I think it's hard to find a TL1000. It's the same motor as the V-Strom, right? It's that big 1000cc twin.
Yes, but they put an R at the end of the at the end of the name, so it's a little bit faster.
I never could make sense of why you would want a TL1000 over just a Gixxer 1000.
Lower torque, a bit more streetable for people who aren't on the racetrack.
I was going to ask you about Gixxer, Zach. They followed that Yamaha pattern, didn't they, with like similar styling and lots of revs, right? After the R1
yeah,
R6
I mean, it's always kind of and that's why I asked you what's your favorite color, because it's Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, and Kawasaki. You're always kind of in this 4-way fight.
Blue, yellow, or what? Green.
Really what it is. Yeah. Incremental nuances in performance. They're all so fast and all look cool. All have whatever engine size and choice you'd want. So it really does come down for a lot of guys of what styling or what brand speaks to them. And there's no shortage of sport bikes you can get in the 5,000 to 9,000 range.
That are what, like 150 plus horsepower, right? I mean, like all the performance.
You're probably looking at, like, you can get some thousands for sure over 150, which is generally not recommended for novice riders. But
yeah, I would say you're looking at like 100 to 120, kind of in that lower price point.
That's kind of what the 600s are putting out, but I think now it's even more.
Well, 200's gone, long gone.
Yeah, that's so wild.
I remember when the BMW, when the 1000 RR came out, and it was 200 horsepower, and
what
everybody
are the early
freaked out.
R's? That's a great looking bike. I have a Lego of one of those, that BMW, the first of
You
the
like
chain
the
drive.
asymmetrical headlights?
Of course I do. The chain, it was the first chain drive, right? Because BMWs were drive shaft
it was
forever,
a
right?
straight shot at Japanese bikes.
It's the same configuration as
I
all
think
these.
those came out. Did those were they the first bikes to have wheelie control also, where it would let you hold lifting the front wheel through the electronics?
I hope so.
They were so technically advanced, and
I remember the commercial where it pulls the tablecloth out from under all the things. It accelerated so fast. Yeah, they had cool promotional around it. What are those? Can you get one of those for 10 grand or less?
I think you can get an early 12 or 13 for probably around 10 grand.
I think so.
But the just funny thing is, once you ride bikes around a bit and have some miles under your belt, like the experience of riding that BMW is not hugely different than a CBR 1000 or pick what gravitates to you, because you're rarely hitting the throttle stop on a bike that has that amount of power. And if you are, you're well over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's always been my problem with some of this like real high performance stuff. It's just so fast. You just can't. Some people do use it. I don't.
I'm looking at
a
2013 Gixxer R1000 that we sold for $11,750. It has 182 horsepower and it revs to 14,000 RPM. Yeah. I don't know what you do with that. I mean, you guys know because you ride, but that seems so crazy to me. That'd be a lot of power in my like green Porsche, It's so crazy.
I know. That's part of why I love moto swaps in the cars. But that experience for me is what framed the engines I like in cars. I like high revving, naturally aspirated engines that make cool noises.
Have either of you guys ever ridden an artificially aspirated bike? Isn't the one of the real powerful, I think it's a Ninja, has a turbo or a supercharger on it?
Is it the HP2s? And you could get a naturally aspirated and a supercharged one? Yeah.
And then there's some old Honda bikes that were turbos too, I think.
Yeah, the CX 500, CX 650. I have not ridden one. I think they're okay. I think they're about what you would imagine like an 80s turbo, early 80s turbo bike to be like. Because
what people talk about with those early intercooled 930s and the boost coming on mid-corner and it creating problems, that's the last thing you want when you're leaned over in a turn on one of those. So it generally doesn't work wonderfully, and engines are just so powerful already that's why you see less of them. But I bet a supercharger works a lot better in that format because that's predictable. It's sort of like a similar anecdote of Tyler. Do you remember when the 03 VFRs came out? Yeah. And they had VTEC, and it was like proper Honda hit, comes on 8,000 RPM and hits really hard. 2 years into the model cycle, they dialed that out and gave it more of like an iVTEC because too many people are complaining with it coming on like almost like a turbo.
Are those because you want linear power, obviously. Are those desirable now, the ones that have the VTEC kick, or no?
Yeah, that's a good question. What do you think?
I mean, they sell for like $4,000. Yeah, so from a market perspective, but I think they look cool.
Wasn't that the problem with the Kawa Triple too? The two-stroke famous Kawasaki 3-cylinder 750.
Yeah, it was just wild.
But the two-stroke power came on
the Widowmaker.
Yeah, in like a very weird way, right? Where people didn't quite know how to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, any two-stroke is going to kind of come on when you sort of least expect it.
Just like my Moto Compo.
Just like the Moto Compo. That's right. Zach, the power curve on the Moto Compo is hard to deal with.
I forgot you had that Moto Compo now. That's so awesome.
I kind of want to dip my toe in. This is not motorcycle at all, but the Moto Compacto, we had one recently, which is the like electric, not really a successor to the Moto Compo because it's way slower and stuff, but it folds into like a credit card shaped box. And they're like $1,000, and I kind of want my wife to get me one for Christmas.
Nice. They make a lot of sense as a pit bike.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because we were at Monterey this year again for our awesome BAT alumni gathering, and our thing was so much bigger this year. I was like, man, I wish I had like a skateboard with an electric motor on it or something, because I had to keep walking from one gate to the other. And a Moto Compacto would have been great.
Yeah, we've got to get some like alumni event Moto Compactos to go in a Pelican case.
Correct.
And they just ship wherever all of the other stuff for our alumni event ships.
Skateboard wheels on it, basically. The Moto Compo has like a real tire on it, right?
It's got to have a rubber tire.
11 inches?
Okay, this looked tiny on the Moto Compacto.
Oh, the Moto it is. It's like a longboard wheel. I mean, it doesn't, it's not big at all.
Totally. I think they're a little more of a toy than a Moto Compo.
Yeah, a few people on staff have them, and they love them. I think they're super cool. It's just kind of, again, another wild thing where it's like nobody asked for this, and yet Honda delivered.
I just love Honda. That's my problem.
I think we all agree on. Yeah, I think we're all team Honda here.
Yeah.
Well, back to your point about performance, I feel, and maybe I don't think this is like a universal sentiment, but what I saw when I was riding bikes is what we're seeing with cars now, where the performance is so high, you start to gravitate towards experiences over just chasing stuff like power and numbers. So I always like to look to, like, Tyler's got a good mix of stuff in his garage with the ST2 touring Ducati, and you're kind of a Harley guy through and through.
I have no Harleys at the moment, though, but I am, though. I am.
One of these days, I'm going to sit you down and we're just going to do the Harley podcast, and you're going to educate me on each model, and we're going to talk.
Well, we've got like 120, almost 125 years to cover.
Well, yeah, maybe it'll be a series then. But for me, I always kind of, especially because I live in city, urban environment, supermotos were always kind of capture of my eye. It's such a good city bike. They're so narrow. You can dice up traffic, no problem.
Even the cops ride them here, right? Don't they ride as some kind of a supermoto?
And that's actually my dream job, to be SFPD on the Kawasaki KLRs.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome.
Lifting wheels off the hills. Like,
they also wear like different uniforms. Like the city of San Francisco, they have, I think they're BMWs or they're big cruisers, but then there's a Harley crew.
There's Harleys, yeah.
And then there's the dirt bike crew. And the dirt bike crew, they almost look like they're in Star Wars or something, like Imperial Guards. They wear like tall boots and like black. It's like a whole different thing. Oh, yeah.
Oh, really? It's got to be the coolest
They're
job.
in the park mainly, right? I think they're in the Golden Gate Park.
They work like some big events, I think, because they're nimble and can get through crowds.
Yeah. But they don't wear like as many gun belts and stuff. Like they have a stripped down whole thing. Looks like they're ready to chase people.
That's probably
although they don't chase the sideshow people or whatever. I saw like the biggest sideshow ever this weekend or 2 weekends ago. Driving through San Francisco. Is that what they're called when all the guys are like going 12 o'clock with no helmets on dirt bikes?
I was going to say, wait, what's
12
the
o'clock
sideshow?
boys?
Yeah,
12 o'clock boys.
Yeah, there were like a couple hundred of them driving over Market Street. And like this is the first time I've seen this. I was on the other side and Felix was like, whoa, what's that? I'm like, yeah, this is pretty sick. And there were dudes on quads doing wheelies.
I mean, I always love seeing it.
But it was pretty awesome. It was the biggest one I've ever seen. But this was a little sketchy. They were also out of nowhere. They came down the wrong side of the road and they were going head on. And I was like, oh, that's not so great. But anyway, I didn't see any police chasing them on, what's that type of bike called again, Zach? What did you call it?
I think they're a KLR 650.
KLR 650.
That's like a dual sport. Supermoto gets 17-inch wheels, sport bike wheels, instead of the big 21-inch front wheel. They get a big, large single disc brake up front and inverter forks like on a sport bike. So, but they still have all the suspension travel of kind of a dirt bike. So you could be a total hooligan on it. It's really easy to lift the front wheel. You can get some air with both wheels off a lot of the hills we have here in SF. They're nimble. Yeah, it's just a ton of fun.
What's the difference between that and a hypo-motard, or is that kind of the same thing?
That hyper-motard may have to go the way of Confederate Motors and change, I think, the last part of that name for PC-related reasons.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like a dumb term that Ducati made up.
It's made
I think
up.
It was that was their model name, wasn't it?
I think Hypermotard 1100 they came out with. It looks like a supermoto, but the whole idea behind a supermoto is that it's really light, like a dirt bike. So
right.
Really
these have like a big motor in them.
They're a big Ducati twin. Yeah. They weigh, I think, around 380 or 400 pounds. They have a good 100 pounds on a lot of these other bikes.
Gotcha.
They have a lot more power. Like you can ride it on the freeway. You could take a distance where supermoto is like a dirt bike. It's super vibrating, big single. I couldn't see out the mirrors on the freeway because it would vibrate so bad. Yeah. And if you are accelerating to get on the freeway, the mirrors I had in my Husqvarna, the force of the air from the acceleration, they'd both just flip down so you could only see the ground. You had
love that.
Look over your left to merge.
What is a KTM Duke? Is that in these? I love the looks of those with big motors and small motors. Is that in the same kind of category of bike?
That'd be like a Street Fighter, maybe?
It's like kind of splits the difference of, what you might call a street fighter, just kind of like a naked bike
naked. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of Ducati Monster, Suzuki SV650.
But it seems like people sit real upright on those, like a dirt bike.
Yeah, think of like it's sort of what all the Honda CBs of the 60s and 70s are, where it's just this simple, unfaired, reasonably lightweight. People often refer to them as a standard motorcycle or unfaired naked.
I've always liked them a lot. Speaking of which, you guys, I think either you, Tyler, or you, Zach, one of you said just pick your color. color and shape or what I'm attracted to. What about the KTM Superbike? Is it called an RC8, something like that?
Oh, the 1190s. Yeah.
Those are. I mean, they're fantastic bikes. We've sold a few of them. We sold a couple of our friends down at More Imports listed a handful of them a few years ago, like kind of all right together. And they had a couple street versions, and then I believe it was their same client also had a track version of it, the RC8R, I want to say. And we've sold a few of those. And angular styling. It's got that
which I like.
Orange frame, which I'm kind of like, if you're going to go with a particular brand, like go with their color. You know, if you're going to get a Yamaha, go with yellow with the their racing stripe
white,
logo.
And they have the checkerboard that goes with that.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going Honda, red, white, and blue. But yeah, if you're going KTM,
Honda Repsol livery for me.
Ooh, that's good.
Those are good though. Honda doesn't do anything wrong. I mean, I agree. I agree with you on that, Zach.
Man. Good pivot away from the RC8. You guys
the RC8's great. I mean, it looks like a concept.
They look like the thing that made me think of it was the combat motors thing, right? Like it's not obviously the combat motors is way crazier, but to your point, it has kind of angular.
I always like them. I just like 3 and 4 cylinder motorcycles. Twins just weren't quite it for me.
There's also a new bike. We're talking about Roland Sands earlier, and Alex, I know you and I have talked about Eric Buell and some of the crazy things he's done. His new company is basically building a Rotax powered kind of Harley FXR style bike.
Oh, wow.
And I want to say Roland Sands is actually involved in that design and development. And it's 140 horsepower in a well-designed, quote unquote Harley. And I cannot wait for those to come out. Those are going to be so much fun.
What's the company called? Do you know?
It's Eric Buell.
Oh, it's the Buell company.
Yeah.
Or it's a new Buell company, right?
It's the newest version of Eric Buell's company. Yes.
We were talking about the Kim Barnes podcast. She's got a couple Buells, a Firebolt that she said she rides on the track, and then an earlier one that has that's like a little more conventional, doesn't have the hollow swing arm and the hollow frame and all that stuff for fuel and oil. I love those. But again, I'm attracted to them because of the way they look. I don't know anything about how they ride.
Yeah. And speaking of FXRs too, we had another one. Talk about some cool bikes that we've had on the site recently. We had an FXR4, which was kind of like Harley's first CVO, custom vehicle operations. It was kind of like their first version, where the typically production FXR that was done by 1994, and Harley must have had parts or something laying around, and they brought back the FXR style in 99 and 2000 with the FXR2, FXR3, and FXR4. And we recently sold an FXR4 and got a great result. The seller was really happy. I think he's got some other FXRs lined up, but it's kind of one of the cool things that I've kind of, Zach, we're looking back on motorcycles here at BAT, and like one of the things I love is like that's a bike that probably didn't have like a great home for collectors to buy and sell really before we've like got hot and heavy on bikes here. So it's I love that we're able to move something like that and treat it like the collector bike that it is, and not just like a used Harley on Cycle Trader or on Craigslist or something. Nobody else was really doing that.
We need to go through that's our next thing. I want to go through the whole history of Harley and talk about some of those. Do you have Harley interest, Zach?
I think there's something so American about riding a Harley, especially in the state of Arizona with no helmet laws, just cruising open road, desert sunset, that I kind of romanticize. I think that would be cool. But for me and my personal tastes, I think it's just not quite for me.
I kind of agree with you, but I still think they're really interesting. Have you ever ridden one?
No, I never have.
Wow.
I've only ridden a couple cruiser motorcycles in general and never a Harley.
That's next time.
Yeah, my tastes in Harley have just skewed so old at this point.
Yes.
Like I like the teens, 20s.
Oh, totally.
Well, that's one of the other great things about Harley, though. If your taste skews old, you're basically buying close to a bike you could have bought in the 50s, 60s, or 70s just today.
Oh, basically today.
A warranty they probably won't honor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I want you, when we do this, to school me on the Harley MotoGP bikes, the ones that got kind of special cheater rules.
Oh, okay.
Right, those are, I love the looks of those.
The Class C flat trackers and AMA bikes.
Yep, exactly. But they weren't MotoGP; they were AMA. There was a sport. There was a what are those called? Just remind me of the name.
XR750s.
Yes, the XR750.
Mm-hmm. And before that, the KR750s came before that. And other than that, they were using just like 45 cubic inch.
Yes.
Or as you may refer to it, 750 cc's. Flatheads.
No, you can go cubic inches.
One of the other things I love about Harley as a brand is they don't quote horsepower figures anywhere.
No.
They won't tell you how much horsepower their engines make, but they'll tell you how much torque that they make.
Mhm.
Sick.
Yeah.
Well, as my engineering friends would always say, horsepower is fake. It's just a function of torque. So the horsepower numbers are, I know I can't explain to you the science behind that, but they only care about torque.
I just know the fact that a horse has 2 horsepower.
I'm already confused.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you lost me.
So what? Yeah. What is this unit?
What does this mean?
And you know, and none of it matters when you're driving your like OCC long fork chopper down the Arizona highway.
Totally.
So like, who cares?
Totally. With no helmet on.
With no helmet on.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. We definitely need to do more of these. Any last thoughts? Anything else you guys want to mention before we end today? It's always a pleasure doing this with you, gentlemen. Thank you for schooling a moron. I definitely came across as a moron today. So
No, it was fun.
Well, now you know how I feel every podcast.
no, hardly. Zach is like crushing in these competitions we have
I've been
over one
listening.
car
I
garage.
know.
Probably
I know.
because I'm talking too much.
Yeah, to be honest, I was a little nervous coming in here, and I'm like, I feel like I can't get schooled by Zach like on the motorcycle side of things, but I know he would because he.
I
just
really
always
want to try to make that game work for motorcycles, but I couldn't quite puzzle it out. But maybe we can figure that
it
out.
out.
We'll figure that
we'll
out
just
some way.
turn the mics on and start riffing.
But then you need to get somebody in here who actually knows about motorcycles, who's not me, to compete with you guys. So, well, thanks, gentlemen, for doing this, as always. And thanks to all of you for listening. Please send questions, comments, concerns to podcast@bringatrailer.com. Thank you, as always, for listening, and we will catch you next time.